Hi, everybody. I'm Deborah Carney, your host, and welcome to our newest episode of the BookGoodies podcast. We've been on hiatus for a little while, and we're really pleased to come back with author Nina Amir. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Oh, cool. I'm a little rusty, so I haven't done one of these in a while, and I want to make sure I get everything right. Nina has written a couple of books. How to Blog a Book was that your first book?
I have some self-published books, but that was my first traditionally published book.
Okay. And it's a really cool book for bloggers and how to turn your blog into a book or how to write a book using your blog. And we actually have a whole podcast on that I'll link to in the show notes. And now we're here to talk to Nina about her new book, The Author Training Manual. So, Nina, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and then why you decided to write this book?
Okay. So, and by the way, I'm so pleased to be back on your show. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no problem.
So, about myself. So, as you said, I am the author of How to Blog a Book and the Author Training Manual, and people know me as the Inspiration to Creation Coach because I move my clients from ideas to finished books as well as to careers as authors by helping them combine their passion and their purpose so they create products that positively and meaningfully impact the world. And I like to transform writers into inspired, successful authors and authorpreneurs and blogpreneurs. And I've worked as a developmental editor and a line editor. Typically these days, I work as an author coach and a blog coach and a book coach and a blog-to-book coach, as well as an inspired results coach. And I also blog a ton. I have 4 blogs and run National Nonfiction Writing Month, and as we're speaking, it's April, and I run National Book Blogging Month, which is when people do blog books. And
oh, beautiful! I didn't know about that. Is that running during April?
It is. So they're typically blogging short books in April because it's you can't really do a good job of blogging a book in a month. Not a long book. You can do a short book, but not a long book. So anyway, so that's me. And then I think you asked about why I wrote the Author Training Manual. Is that right?
Yep.
So I actually had the idea for the Author Training Manual before How to Blog a Book. And there's a chapter in How to Blog a Book where I talk about the proposal process. And that's because I had this idea before that book. And I was going to write this book first, except that then I had the idea for How to Blog a Book. And so that sort of took precedence because it was timely. The idea for it came out of me wanting to be a traditionally published author and working on book proposals. And what I discovered was that by working on a book proposal, you actually would evaluate your idea and yourself in the process. And by doing that, you would really train yourself to become successful because you would train yourself to evaluate your idea.
Right.
For marketability, so that you would produce the most marketable or most viable product you possibly could, because your book is a product, and you would hone it and fine-tune it so that it would sell the most copies possible, because that's what publishers want. They want a book that will sell. And you would also evaluate yourself because publishers are looking for a good business partner, somebody who can help sell books and has a author platform. And so in looking at all of that, I realized that what I had called in How to Blog a Book, the book proposal process or the proposal process really was an author training process. And I had along the lines created a workbook that I called How to Evaluate Your Book for Success. Mm-hmm. And so that workbook was supposed to be sort of the foundation for this book. And it has become the workbook element in the author training manual. So at the back of the book, there is what we call training exercises. And in the middle of the book, there are sample business plans, which are how you learn to see yourself and your work through the lens of an acquisitions editor, because that's the person who acquires work for a publisher.
Now, that's a really cool idea. And the other thing that I'm thinking as you're saying this is you said you did this because you wanted to be traditionally published, but this is also really important for someone who is self-published.
It is enormously important for someone self-published because the person who is self-published is opening a publishing company of their own, and they have no one to tell them whether their book is marketable because they're the acquisitions editor, they're the publisher.
Yep.
So they have to determine this for themselves. And if they do not create a business plan for their books before they take them to market, they're making a really big mistake because they could invest a lot of time and money in these books and not have them be viable products in the marketplace. So it behooves them to have a business plan for each and every book. And I've written a lot and talked a lot about how these business plans can actually be expanded to create a business plan for your publishing company and how important that is.
And I think you hit upon something that's really, really important that a lot of self-published authors don't really consider when they write a book and they put it up on Kindle and, they're like really excited because now they have a book out there. They don't realize that they just created a publishing company. They just think that they self-published a book. So I think you hit the nail on the head that they need to realize that they have suddenly not just become a published author. They are a publishing company and they need to treat their book and the subsequent books as being part of a company and part of a business. So, why now? One of the things you talk about, one of the very first things you talk about is author attitude. So why do writers need an author attitude and what are the 4 elements that make this attitude up?
So writers really have a tough road to hoe. 81% of the United States population says they want to write a book, but only 2% actually does that. And that tells you something about how difficult the task really is. And it's not that easy to write the book, first of all. It can take time and effort. And then it's not as easy as you think to publish it. I mean, it's easier these days. People think, oh, well, I'll just write it and I'll slap it up there on, Amazon, via Kindle or CreateSpace. It is easier than it used to be. It's getting harder to traditionally publish, but it's hard. And after 8 years of struggling to get my own books traditionally published and to succeed with my self-published books, which I didn't promote, I have to tell you. So see, there's this whole element, this promotion thing. I made a decision because I was taking all this time to build Author Platform and I was trying to get these publishing deals and I wasn't doing what it took to actually make my self-published book sell. I made a decision and I said to myself, I refuse to fail. And in that moment, something happened. And what happened was that my attitude shifted. And after that, I accomplished more in the next 2 to 4 years than I had in the previous 8, including getting a book traditionally published. So here's the thing. Attitude is one of the most, it's the central element or the most common element that most successful people share and will tell you has helped them succeed. It's sort of the universal factor that helps people achieve the results they want to have. And authors or aspiring authors have so many things that they need to do besides write. Mm-hmm. And the majority of them don't want to do them. All they want to do is write. So it requires an attitude shift. So that takes us to the 4 elements. Number 1 is this willingness to do everything it takes, not just write, but to do a multitude of things like promote. If you're going to self-publish, just hire subcontracts and be a project manager to build your author platform with speaking and social networking and all of that. Besides that, you have to be willing to get feedback on your work from editors or anyone else that you're going to ask, and to make the changes necessary to your work so it becomes marketable and becomes polished and well written, and possibly to be away from your family. So there are all these things that you have to be willing to do. So that's the W. Okay, because I have 4 letters, okay, and they're going to make a word. So number 1 is W for willingness. The next one is optimism. So we have O for optimism. Optimism is very important because you're going to, as a writer, have rejection. When you submit your books for traditional publishers, you're going to have criticism because, reviewers might criticize you. You also are going to submit your work to editors for review, and they're going to give you constructive criticism. You're going to have all kinds of different obstacles you have to overcome. The thing is that optimists are more likely to succeed because of their attitude, and studies show this, that optimists see rejection and criticism, all these things as just challenges to be overcome, and they don't take them personally. But pessimists take things personally. Yep. They take these same things personally, and they get stuck because they say, oh, there's something inherently wrong with my work or inherently wrong with me, and I can't fix it. And so they just get stuck. So you have to be optimistic. So the third letter is another O, and that's objectivity. You have to be objective about the criticism and about the feedback of your work. But more than that, you have to have have the objectivity to see from a different perspective. Now, remember, I mentioned acquisitions editors, or the people who acquire work for a publishing company. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to see yourself and your work from their perspective, through their lens. It's the same lens, really, as a literary agent, except one step farther along the road. Now, even if you're going to self-publish, you have to have the objectivity to see from this perspective. Because when you can see through the lens of this kind of a publishing professional, you can determine how to make your work and yourself marketable. And that's hugely important. It's what we were just talking about being self-published, and that you're the one who has to determine if your idea is worth bringing to market. And then there's a T for tenacity. And that is so important because you need to be able to keep going no matter what, whether you get rejected like Jack Canfield 129 times or whatever it was. And when the writing feels hard and you don't want to do it, and when the sales don't come in, or when you're struggling in any way, tenacity is one of the top qualities of successful people. So if you put that together, you have W for willingness, O for optimism, O for objectivity, and T for tenacity, and it spells WOOT. So like woot, 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 woot. So that's what you want. You want to, at the end of the day, to be able to have an author attitude, and the way to remember it is with WOOT.
I love it. That's really cool. And I didn't have a chance to actually read through your book, so this is all new to me, which is really cool because it's new to our readers as well. And for those listening, the reason I didn't read the book is because I have a concussion and I can't read yet. So
we give you a pass.
Not that I didn't want to read the book. I actually bought it when it first came out for pre-sale. So I was hoping that I would, have time to read it before we did a podcast. But regardless, that's really exciting because you have put it in a way that authors can understand it. I think that all of your points are so relevant to both people who want to be traditionally published and self-published. How many times did J.K. Rowling get turned down, and other, really successful people that we consider to be successful authors, they weren't overnight successes. They were turned down a lot before they finally hit. Now, in order to become one of those successful authors, and, you talked about attitude, and you've mentioned the word business plan, which I'm sure has scared off a bunch of people already. They're like, what the heck? I don't have a marketing, I don't have a business degree. How do I come up with a business plan? So why does an aspiring author need to have a business plan for their books before they even start writing?
The reason is that a business plan helps you produce a marketable book. Okay, so a marketable book is one that's going to sell. And a business plan has all the elements in it, like a market analysis and a competitive analysis to help you evaluate your idea to see if it's a viable product, one that's going to sell to your target market, to your ideal readers. And in fact, that's what publishers use to evaluate the marketability of a book. And they call it a book proposal. And they're going to be novelists who are listening to this who are going to say, well, that doesn't pertain to me. But that's not true. More and more often, publishers are looking at proposals for novels. And I mean, they always have, but they would look at the manuscript first. And occasionally they would buy one just on the manuscript. But you need to be able to determine if before you put hours and hours into writing your book and money into publishing it, if you self-publish, into whether you have a market. And these book proposals or business plans, and again, you know, as a self-published author, you want to do this. So you don't have to, it's not being proposed to anyone at that point. So it's not a book proposal if you do it for yourself. But in any case, it's a business plan. The publisher sees it as a business plan for a book. And it contains a promotion plan. It says how you're going to promote the book, and it contains this market analysis. It says whether other books similar to yours have made any money, whether they've sold any books. And it also says something about you as a person, whether you have built that author platform and all of that. So you know, I love hearing from readers who tell me that my books have helped them in some way. It makes my day. Mm-hmm. That's why I write, to inspire and to support others in moving, you know, from inspiration to creation of their ideas. But I won't get that feeling that I've transformed someone's life if I don't craft a book that sells. Because if it doesn't sell, nobody will ever read it.
But, you know, all those authors out there are sitting there going, but my book is the bomb. And my book is going to sell just because I wrote it and because I'm awesome and it's great. So how do you get across to those people that they still need to do a market analysis and that they need to sit down and go through the steps of a business plan?
You know, I can't make anybody do that. You know, I wrote a blog post just recently for another site, and somebody said, "Oh, this takes all the fun out of it. You know, it's not going to be creative. You know, all you need is to be creative and authentic." Well, creativity and authenticity will get you so far, and there are some books that do just make it because they're creative and authentic. Mm-hmm. But how can you be sure? Well, this is what I would say. How can you be sure? I can convince you by saying that if you go through this process and you compare your idea to the other books that are out there and you determine whether your market is large enough and you apply this information to your idea and you hone it and you fine tune it and you retool it, and then you sit down and you apply your authenticity and your creativity and your inspiration and your passion to your idea, you will come up with the best possible book that you could write. And that is a much higher chance of selling than something that you just go, oh, I have a good idea, I'm going to write it.
Now, do you have examples of business plans in the book?
There are 4 examples in there. There are more examples that were compiled, but we didn't get them all in the book, and I'm hoping they will be available. Okay. But there are examples from 2 literary agents and 2 acquisitions editors, which you don't normally see them from acquisitions editors. Okay. And they have gone through and they have given feedback on them so that you can see through their eyes.
Okay. And I think that's what's important is that a lot of writers, they need to have like something to follow. They need to have a plan to follow. But then they also need to realize that it doesn't have to be cut, dried, boring. Your business plan can have your personality in it. And it actually should. You should be able to be creative with your business plan as far as how do you plan to promote your book. You know, don't just list, oh, well, you know, I'm going to buy an ad here, there, and here. And, you know, I'm going to rely on my friends to promote it for me. You know, you can be creative and talk about those types of things in your business plan.
Yeah, you can, of course. And if you're doing it for yourself, if you're self-publishing, you know, then it's a different story because you're also looking at, you know, you're producing something for yourself. And when you do, for instance, the first section of a book proposal is the overview, you're basically creating, you know, marketing copy for yourself. You know, you're writing a summary of the book and you're creating a list of benefits. And these are things that can easily go on the back cover copy. or the back cover of your book. It's not so much about writing compelling copy to convince someone to invest in your book. It's to make them buy it. So
Right.
this should be fun and creative and interesting for you. And then there are sections, I love the section called spin-offs. Which a lot of people don't bother with.
Mm-hmm.
The spin-off section is all about your career planning, really. It's about, what follow-up books will you write? What sequels? What series might you do?
Mm-hmm.
And I take this a step farther to ask people, what kind of business might you want to create around your book? Even for novelists, how are you going to create an income around your books? And writing more books is the first way. There are studies that now show, research that's now showing that authors only start really making money from their books when they have 3. That's the tipping point. And that hybrid authors, those who are traditionally publishing and self-publishing, are really making a living from their books when they have 12 books in the marketplace. But beyond that, could you create courses or membership sites or coaching or consulting, or could you cross over from fiction to nonfiction and thereby, do some kind of coaching or consulting, or, these are the kind of things that when you really start putting together a business plan, you can plan out your whole career, and say, I have 10 books I want to write, and when am I going to write them, and in what order, and how are they going to go together, and how will they brand me?
There's the word.
Yeah.
There's that word that a lot of people don't think about. And the word branding. People, I think a lot of authors, when they're first starting out, they don't think about what brand are they building. And that's where pen names come into play, which is something else that you should probably, if you're building this whole plan onto what you're going to be doing, if you're building your brand one way and then you do want to branch off into something else, that's going to require a different brand and a different, like if you're doing nonfiction and you're doing young adult fiction and then you decide that you want to do some adult fiction, you need to understand that takes a different plan and needs to be maybe a different personality.
That's possible. And so it's very important to think about this early on. And that's why I say that first book idea, that's the time to sit down and create that business plan for your book. And in the process, create a business plan for your career. And that's where that, people don't think about that. But if you do this section called spin-offs, you start to think about it. And it becomes much clearer to you, and if you expand on it, then it becomes much clearer to you where you're going. I wish I had done that. And I'm speaking about this particular part in particular because I have like 14 books that I still want to write. And I just changed literary agents and we're doing hybrid publishing. And, we're having to there's some books I really would like to write tomorrow, and we're putting them off because I've worked so hard on one aspect of one area of the books I want to write and not on another area. And so there's a bridging that has to happen and a branding that has to happen. And so you have to think about that. And if you think about it early, you can avoid some of the pitfalls.
Yep. That's really important. I really see now that's something that I think a lot of people, they noodle about in their head a little bit when they're writing a book. They're like, oh, I think I might have another book after I'm done with this book because this book is so much fun. And there's little things that are leading me to wanting to do a second book. Even when you're writing fiction, and of course, when you're writing nonfiction, you want to write forever about the things that you love and that you want to teach people. And it would be easy to go off on tangents. And I think you brought up a good point about fiction writers. Not only can you build your books, but if you're building a series or some kind of a world around your books, you can easily create websites and platform that goes along with that, and that you can eventually get to the point where you want to help other people do the same thing. And then you don't have to be sitting and writing every day, all day, unless you want to. But you can plan that out ahead of time. In the future, do you want to go in this direction? And that will help you determine your path and help you brand yourself from the beginning the way that you want to go. And I think the other thing for fiction writers, a lot of fiction writers are just like, and I'm seeing this on BookGoodies. I'm seeing a lot of authors, they'll submit a book to us and they'll choose like 8 different genres for their book. And I think that more fiction authors need to understand their audience a little bit better and understand it's okay to be cross-genre, but you need to be careful that if you're writing, if you're writing in a certain genre, you're not going too far into other genres, so like you're writing a mystery, sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal. What?
Right. I think that's partly because...
who's your audience?
Right. And I think that's partly because, self-publishing has allowed for that. Like with Kindle, by posting to Kindle, you have way more categories that you can be in. And it's made it confusing for them, because I know that when I'm, for instance, at a writer's conference and we're doing like a pitch session, the authors cannot pinpoint one category. And when you go into a bookstore, you're going to be in one category.
Yeah, you can't.
You're going to find yourself in one place in that bookstore. And I can tell you that I had a book proposal that went out, and I happened to be on a panel with the acquisitions editor, and they had turned down from the publishing house, and they had turned down my book, the book idea. And I said something to her about it, and she said, "What was the book?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, I remember that book." She said, "I liked it." And I said, "Well, then why did you turn it down?" She said, "We couldn't figure out what category it would go into."
There you go.
Right. You have to have extreme clarity about where your book will show up in a bookstore. And it is on one shelf and one shelf only. But when you go to Amazon, you get like 3 categories. So people are starting to go, "Oh, well, I'll put, I'm in 3 genres."
Right. And I think that creating a business plan will help you focus on, because part of a business plan is audience.
Oh, yeah.
So,
it is.
You really need to know your audience and who you're targeting before you can start marketing. So now, how does a new author get themselves trained? How do they train themselves for success? I just want to write a book. How do I get myself into that attitude where, how do I get myself ready to be successful?
So they really have to put on a business hat, and they have to learn to evaluate the contents of that business plan in the same way as a publishing professional, such as an agent or an acquisitions editor. And that means seeing from that perspective, from that business perspective, as well as from the creative perspective, which is why in the book, in the author training manual, we've included those samples with the actual comments from the editors and acquisitions editors. So you have to learn to look at each bit of information that you put into your business plan and ask some important questions, which are, does this convince me or someone else that this idea will sell once it goes to market? Does this information convince someone that I'm a good publishing partner, or that I can produce this book and help sell it? And that's a question that even if you independently publish, that you have to ask, right? So it's a matter of really accumulating the information, on the market and on the competitive titles, and getting a table of contents and getting chapter summaries, even for fiction, and putting it all together. And the promotion plan, all of it, putting it all together and evaluating it very realistically and objectively, and then and in that way you are functioning more like an agent or an acquisitions editor, and that trains you for success.
I like that. And to follow up on that, the primary thing the author needs to do to succeed, which isn't just have a good idea, there are a lot of people with great ideas. There's a lot of people that write well. So what's that primary thing they need to do? They need
to be good business people. And I'm so glad you said what you did, because there are a lot of great ideas out there, and there are a lot of good writers. But you don't even have to be a good writer. You can hire a ghostwriter, or you can hire an editor if you have a good writer. If you have a good idea. but you have to be a good business person. And look, I know people are listening to this and they're saying, I am not a business person. I am a writer. I'm a creative person.
Mm-hmm.
So am I. Really, so am I. My eyes glaze over when it comes to numbers and marketing and profit and loss statements. And, Ted Koppel has this thing he calls the Migo factor, and it's my eyes glaze over. And that is me. But I have had to learn to be an entrepreneur because it's essential. If you traditionally publish, you're basically seeking a venture capital partner for your book. And if you self-publish, you're the publisher. You're creating a startup company, a publishing house of your own. So in either case, you have to be a good business person. And you better learn the marketing end, which is business, because knowing how to sell your book is what it's all about. A successful book is one that outsells the others in its category. That's how it becomes a bestseller. And the average book sells only about 250 copies per year, and ebooks only sell about 550 copies per year. Mark Coker at Smashwords did the numbers for me. Mm-hmm. So, plus books just don't make authors much money. So, you better become a good business person if you're going to do this and be profitable at it.
Yeah, there's people that want to break that 500 ebooks.
Oh, yeah.
Level. So, and the other thing, too, is, the business plan, it's going to help you, because we talked about the spin-off part, it's going to help you have a successful career and not just one successful book. And, talk a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, we've already talked about it, but that really is my favorite part of the whole process. You create a plan and you map out all these books that you want to write, these follow-up books and spin-offs and sequels, and you start thinking about how to brand yourself and which book logically follows the next. And this becomes your plan for your career. And what could be more exciting than that? But, so I don't know, to me, that's really where the fun is, and where this becomes more than just a one-book business plan. And that's what I like to see authors do, is really to start thinking outside the box of one book and to plan it out so that they can have a successful career and to not get sidetracked. I got sidetracked a lot, and I have it's very hard to get back on track, and I had to stop and figure out how to brand myself so that, because I was writing about writing and publishing and blogging, but I started out as somebody who was writing about spirituality and personal development, mm-hmm. and I dropped that along the way, not 100%, but I really stopped focusing on it when I started doing the books on writing and publishing and blogging. And I had sort of the split personality, or with these two very, what seemed like very different areas, and had to create an umbrella as a brand that would encompass all of it. And now I've had to, create a plan of what books to write next, that would bridge. And luckily I have a lot of ideas, and ideas are always popping up, but it's how to get them in order so that it works. And again, like I said, I'm not so happy that I need to wait, to do certain ones later till they'll be more successful, mm-hmm. when I could have been building my platform, in both areas more equally, and publishing more equally, and all of that, had I had a better plan. So I'm speaking really from my own experience here. And, but yet this is really the part that I think is the most fun and exciting and interesting, and will yield the most results.
Now, you write 4 blogs, and we've talked about platform. So are all of those blogs part of your platform?
Yes, to some extent. So I have writenonfictionnow.com and howtoblogabook.com, and those both have to do with writing and publishing.
Okay.
And of course, blogging. My other blog, As the Spirit Moves Me, is sort of a personal blog, but it started out really as a way to build platform around spirituality, practical spirituality, and personal development.
Okay.
So that is my other side. And Then I have a blog called mysoncandance.com, which sounds like it is totally removed from everything else, and it kind of is. But it was created because I wanted to write some books related to boys in the dance world, because I have a son who dances. And it actually is one of my most successful blogs. I in the last year or two, have not written as much on it as consistently because I've been so busy. But it was also created to build platform.
And we've talked about platform a little bit, and I know it's not covered that much in the book, but just because I did just flip through some of the TOC and the training exercises, building a platform as part of as part of the business plan, you want authors to build a platform. What are some of the elements that they need to do to get that started?
Well, blogging would be the first one, because blogging, especially for the nonfiction authors, blogging will help you build expert status very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It will, if you blog often and consistently, really very quickly. I had #1 Google status for, like the terms how to blog a book after just 5 months with that blog, howtoblogAbook.com.
That's awesome.
But from the blog, you can build out the social network. So I highly recommend that you're on social networks. That is a powerful platform as well. One of the most powerful platforms is an email list, and a great way to build an email list is via your blog, because you can have people going there and signing up for it. So that's another one. And then, of course, there's speaking. And nowadays we also have, YouTube, and of course there's podcasting. And I mean, there's just so many ways now to do it. The main thing is to be sure that you're building your platform to your target audience. So it's all about building visibility, so making yourself visible to your audience, to your target audience, and developing more reach. So that's, more and more people hearing about you. So that's the people sharing and getting engaged and all of that. And that's building your authority. Your authority starts with your credentials and those kind of things. But from there, it builds by how many people are actually sharing what you do and what you say. And all of that will create influence, and influence is the real platform, because when you have a lot of people who know who you are and you have influence, then when you say, hey, my book came out, go buy it, people will do that. People listen to you when you have influence. And so that's the real platform. And there is quite a bit said in the book, in the author training manual, about platform and about what it means and the necessity for it.
Good. See, that's one of the things that I try to get across to authors, is that Facebook isn't your platform. Your blog is your platform. You need to have your own place where you send people from all your other social media. And I think that that's something that some authors have a hard time with. They just think that they're all scattered and they don't have a home base, and they don't understand what a platform is and where to build it from. So for you to say they need to start with a blog, that was, that's one of the points I try to drive home. So I'm glad that you reinforced that for me.
Yeah, sure. Because Facebook or Twitter or all of those could go away. I mean, which is not to say that you shouldn't build that.
Right.
But you want to have a home of your own, and that's your blog is a website, and it's your home in cyberspace. It's your author website, and it functions as a website. And you want to be sending them there, and that's why I also said your mailing list is one of your primary platform elements, because it's, when you can say I have 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 people on a mailing list that I can contact, and I know they're interested in what I do because they signed up.
Right.
And even if you've segmented it by interest level, or interests, now you're talking, because you own that list. You do not own the names on Facebook. Facebook owns those.
Yep, exactly. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us, and I'm really glad to support your book, because authors, even though many authors are going to think that this is aimed toward nonfiction, we've pointed out throughout, this is actually really important for fiction authors as well. And I do know fiction authors that have business plans and that have good platforms and that are building email lists. And those are the fiction authors that are going to go far. And many of them may have started out with like not really a fiction book. They started out maybe with a nonfiction, not really nonfiction, but a memoir. A lot of people don't lump memoir in with nonfiction. But I know that the most successful authors that I know have a plan, and they're working toward that 3 books. They know they need those 3 books, and they know that they need to get to that 12 book. And they may not have known what the number is, but they know that they want to get a book out there every 3 to 4 months, and they know what book they want to do next and why. And I think that some of them have a business plan and don't even realize they have a business plan. But the authors that are successful are the ones that have at least sat down and thought about it and written it down. So do you have any last thoughts for our listeners before we go?
I would just say, that to embrace what's necessary, because that's the thing about the attitude. We've talked so much about the business plan and all of that. And so, for those who are going, I just don't want to do that and whatever, I get it. It's not like I sit down every day and want to write a business plan for my next book, or a book proposal. It's not my favorite thing to do, as I said, but the point about the attitude is just that. It's the attitude you need. You need to, when your attitude changes, you embrace everything you have to do, even the things you dislike the most. You embrace them because doing them gets you closer to your end goal, which is to become an author, and not just an author, but a successful author. And you find a way. And if that way means that you pay someone to help you, fine. Doesn't matter how you accomplish it, but you embrace everything that it takes to get there. And when you do that, you don't hate the stuff anymore. You don't hate the tasks anymore. You love them because they're getting you where you want to go, which is to be a successful author and to have your book succeed. So that's what I would leave them with, is just find a way to develop an author attitude.
Awesome. Get that WOOT in your life.
That's right.
Okay, so tell people where they can go to buy the author training manual.
The author training manual is available at all bookstores. So it's at Barnes & Noble, online and off. It's at Amazon.com. It is at Writer's Digest shop and at Indie. I can't think of it. Indie. Anyway, but the easiest way is to just go to booksbyninaamir.com, and that will take you to Amazon. You'll be able to find all my books.
Awesome.
And they can find me at ninaamir.com, and that will also lead you to all the blogs. And if they're interested, is it okay if I tell them about a course I have going on?
Go right ahead.
I have a course that's related to the Author Training Manual and draws on it as a text called Author Training 101. And part of the year, it's just offered as a home study course. And the other part of the year, it's offered live with live coaching from me for 8 weeks. And they can get to the live part of that course at bit.ly, so that's bit.ly / live AT 101, so live capital AT 101, or they can go to Author Training 101, and that will take you just to the home study.
Beautiful. That's awesome. I would take the course as soon as my concussion is gone and I can write again. I can't read and write right now. It's been driving me crazy, and I've been wanting to take a class with you, and I think that it would be beneficial. Yes, I'm a writer. Yes, I know what I'm doing. Yes, I can write a business plan. But you know what? Coaching can sometimes get you by those hurdles that you just can't get by yourself. So I would highly recommend looking into that class if you're at that point. And you'll be able to find the show notes for this podcast at BookGoodies.com. And Nina, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us. I know that that's actually, you do that when you're promoting a book, but you're also very fun to talk to, and you give lots of great advice to people freely, which is important, and we appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to be on your show again, and I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Everybody have a great day. And like I said, stop by BookGoodies.com and you can find this podcast and many others, and find all of our social media where you can follow us. So everybody have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.